You're listening to the DC Comics Chronicles, where we cover every adventure from the streets of Gotham to the skies of Metropolis and into the depths of Atlantis. With your hosts, Adam and Chris.
Welcome to another episode of the DC Comics Chronicles. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me this week is my co-host, Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Oh, man, I'm having a great night, man. Happy to join you again to talk some comics and some cinema. How you doing, Adam?
Indeed, I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty good. I had a blast revisiting the film we're going to be talking about tonight. It's been a while since I watched it, and the issue we're going to talk about was a pretty exciting start as well. So a lot of good things to discuss right off the bat. So to clue the audience in, we're going to go back a little bit to 2009 and review the direct-to-DVD animated movie, Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. And then we are going to segue into the newest iteration of the Batman Superman comic book titled Batman Superman World's Finest #1. So that's on the agenda today, and let's get right into it. So just a little bit of background on my personal background with this story in general. This was the comic book series, the Public Enemy story arc, the first 6 issues that got me back into collecting monthly comic books again.
Awesome.
I remember I got the first 4 issues for Christmas one year, and then I read them that morning, and then as soon as the holiday was over, I called my comic book guy and said, whatever else comes up from this series, set it aside for me each month. And then I was hooked back in. So I really adored the comic story that this movie was based off of.
Who bought the comics for you for Christmas?
My sister did for that year for Christmas again. It was that. She got me those 4 and the 2 hardcover trade paperbacks of the Hush Volume 1 and 2.
Cool.
So that combination did it, and I was back. I was back to monthly collecting, and my wallet's been crying in agony ever since. So that comic book story has a lot of sentimental value for me, and so I was. I remember when this was announced, I was very excited, but also unsure because this was one of the earlier animated movies. So it was like, what's it going to be? How's it going to be? Like, what's the animation going to look like? All those, as excited as I was, all those questions were kind of rolling around in the back of my mind. So, what are your just before we get into the film itself, do you have any recollections of the comic story, and what was your anticipation for the film when you first heard about it?
I read this comic story after seeing the film.
Okay.
So I saw the film first. This was in a time when I was collecting, but I don't think I had picked up that Superman Batman. It was in World's Finest, right? Wasn't that the name or no, it was just Superman Batman.
It was called Superman Batman Public Enemies. That was the first. It was just Superman Batman, but the story arc was called Public Enemies.
Yeah, so I wasn't reading that book at the time, so I hadn't read the storyline before the movie came out. And I ended up getting the movie digitally. I worked at a used CD and movie store. And so when this came into the store, I ripped it onto my hard drive. And so that way I had it to watch on my computer.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome.
So I really had no anticipation for the movie. I I had never read the series. It was by Jeff Loeb and Eric McGinnis, right?
Ed McGuinness, but yeah, you're right.
Ed
Yeah,
McGinnis, that's right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was just looking for something fun to watch. A good DC animated film, but I had nothing to compare it to.
Okay. All right. Cool. So give us a brief summary of the film, and we'll get into discussing it.
Okay. President Lex Luthor frames Superman for the death of John Corbin, aka Metallo, and places a $1 billion bounty on him. Batman joins Superman to help clear his name, and they battle supervillains, superheroes, and even Luthor himself, all while a giant kryptonite meteor the size of a small country is on a collision course with Earth.
Awesome. Yeah. One of the things that hits me right away is that Batman, Superman, and Lex are voiced by the actors who voiced them in the DC animated universe. So Kevin Conroy, Batman the Animated Series, Tim Daly from
Superman.
Superman the Animated Series, and Lex Luthor was Clancy Brown, of course. And they all came back for this, and it just feels perfect for this story. Those voices, I think, feels spot on for this story. I don't think you could have done it. You know how some of the other animated movies have, recast the voices of Batman, Superman, etc. I think this story needed those voice actors.
And Clancy Brown even got top billing. He was first on the cast list at the beginning of the movie.
President Lex, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny when I saw that, rewatching it. It reminded me of the days of Batman '89 when Jack Nicholson got top billing over the guy playing the title character. So,
and even in the original Superman, Gene Hackman over Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, indeed. I forgot about that. Yeah, it was Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, and then Chris Reeve. That's right.
And then the guy playing Superman.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, Christopher Reeve was a fairly unknown back in the day.
Oh, so, yeah.
That's not uncommon. But yeah, so I had a little reminiscence of it there. But I think these guys were the voices that needed to be there to tell this story. And it kind of, I know the animation is different, but it kind of puts it into, like, in your mind. It doesn't specify in terms of specific moments in the film. But in your head, when you hear those voices, you can kind of slot this film in continuity with those animated series if you wanted to.
And the animation isn't really reminiscent of those series, but it is very reminiscent of the artwork in the comic series. You really get a feel for the art style that they were going for in the series.
Yeah, I really, really love the fact that these early, I want to say maybe for the first 4 or 5 years or so of these DC animated movies, each film that was based off a specific storyline really put an effort into mimicking the art style of the comic book. Whereas now they have a more homogeneous, art style for all the connected universe movies. Back in the early days, they really tried to emulate the art of the comic they were adapting. And I really like that. I actually prefer that. It's a nice touch. And this did look like the comic come to life in that sense of the word. Because it did look like Ed McGuinness's art style, for sure. I really liked one of the things that really stands out that they captured very well for me, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is the banter between Batman and Superman. Like, I thought that was pitch perfect.
Yeah, you really get a sense that they're friends with each other, that they care about each other, that they've worked together numerous times before. They even you know, during the fight, they pass one of Batman says castling, and they know Superman knows what that means. You know what I'm saying? He
Yeah.
knows that they're passing off one villain to the next hero. So I thought they did a really good job with the interplay between them, showing the relationship that's been formed over however many years they've been doing this together.
Yeah, and I also liked the back to back. When all those villains were coming after them, they were back to back, and they were fighting, and they were alternating positions and stuff like that. And the talking they were doing during the fight, that was kind of, like, again, just those little touches of a long-standing friendship. And there's a moment in the Batcave where Batman's like, because at one point, like, Luthor frames, as the synopsis says, Luthor frames Superman for killing Metallo. Of course, it was Major Force, but the manipulated footage makes it seem like it was Superman. So Superman, actually, it was before that. Superman goes to confront Lex Luthor because he asked for a meeting to kind of discuss the meteorite situation. And Batman's in the cave, and he's like, "You're going to meet with him, aren't you?" And he's like, "How'd you know?" And he's like, "I know you pretty well." And he's like, "Oh, and if you get it, if it's a trap, and of course it is, don't expect me to come to your rescue." And then Superman's like, "I won't." And he's like, "Remember, I know you pretty well too." And that's the kind of, like, banter that in my head continuity kind of allows me to slot this in to the DC animated universe continuity, because it's like, all right, along the way they've had so many adventures that I can this banter. If I'm a newbie just watching this because I like the DC animation, I can kind of make it fit, which I kind of liked. Overall, I thought this was really close to the comic storyline. Have you actually read the comic, Chris?
I have. It's been a long time now, but I have the trade paperback of it.
Okay. It's very close. Like, the whole. First of all, seeing Lex Luthor as the president is a totally different dynamic than what we're used to from him, at least in terms of film, be it animation or live action. We don't really get that from him that often. So to see it, and it's like, you see how, like, the public facade, the face that he puts on, that he's, all he wants to do is good for the world and the American people. And then behind closed doors, he's still the Lex Luthor that everybody, but especially Superman, distrusts. It's really cool because when that storyline was happening in the comics, there was the sense that Superman knew that Lex was two-faced and underhanded, but he was untouchable because he was the president, and Superman had no physical proof that could tie him to all the things that Superman would want to accuse him of, right? So that dynamic made the battle between Superman and Lex all that more difficult. And it's always been difficult for Superman because Lex is a human that he cannot just punch around and throw into buildings, because if he does, Lex will be dead. So there's always been that difficulty of, how do I stop this guy and make it stick? And him as president makes that all the more difficult. So I really like that dynamic.
Yeah, you mentioned Lex being Two-Face, and Superman is really the only one that sees it. Well, him and probably Amanda Waller, because Lex has a team of superheroes working for him. He has Captain Atom, Major Force, Black Lightning, Power Girl. They're all working for him now under his new role as president. But even when Lex is talking to Amanda Waller, he calls them freaks and monsters, and he lets his real self be seen. and Superman is really the one that knows who Lex is underneath everything, underneath the facade that he's putting on for the public.
Yeah, yeah. But it was very close to the book. They kept a lot of the integral scenes in, like the scene where him and Metallo have that fight, and it ends up in the Gotham Cemetery, and then Batman, comes to his rescue, and they fall through a open grave, into the Gotham sewers, and they get back to the Batcave. I always love that scene in the comic where you have Alfred as the last line of defense if somebody finds that route to the Batcave, and he's there with a shotgun, and he's like, who's there? Identify yourself. And
yeah, Bruce is like, chill out, it's just us.
Right. But I'm thinking, all right, Alfred, if that's great if it's one of Batman's enemies. But in the case of if it's a Superman level threat, what the hell are you gonna do with that gun? You know what I mean? It's like it's. But I guess they're not thinking like you wouldn't think about that, because who else would discover the Batcave but one of Batman's enemies, if you think about it?
Yeah, Alfred was posted up by that electrified fence, waiting to deal out some damage.
Yeah. So I like that, and also, you get the classic Alfred moment where while Batman is taking out the bullet, Alfred's like, "Oh, I took the liberty to wash your uniform so Lois wouldn't have to," or whatever the line he says is, which is kind of cool. They kept the switch moment, the one that you called out, the castling thing, where they're fighting Hawkman, Batman and Superman. There's a moment where Lex sends Shazam and Hawkman after them to apprehend them, but then and they fight. But through the course of the fight, there's a moment where Batman and Superman swap places with Hawkman and Shazam and infiltrate Lex Luthor's bunker. They kept that from the comic, or the bones of that from the comic. The only thing they changed, and I wish they would have kept the location, was that in the movie it takes place in the bunker. In the comic, it takes place in the Oval Office.
Okay.
And there's just something visually about that standoff taking place in the Oval Office that I think looks cool. Also, they took out the scene. There's a scene, leading to that White House scene, where the Bat family and the Superman family sort of storm the White House. And so Nightwing's there, a couple of the Robins are there, Superboy, Supergirl, and that was taken out. It would have been just so cool to see that.
Yeah, I like when they include the secondary characters, especially the Bat family.
And I love that scene in the comics. I'm like, that's a bummer that it wasn't there. But I digress. The one that they kept up, they took out was. And I was actually really disappointed that this one. The one disappointment I have with this movie is that this scene wasn't there, and it's the scene, I don't know if you remember in the book, where Batman is visiting the Batcave by the Kingdom Come Superman, and at one point, the Kingdom Come Superman gets so mad at Batman that he lifts the Batmobile and threatens to throw it on top of him. And the Batmobile that he's lifting is the Batman 66 Batmobile.
Oh, sweet.
And I always love that moment in the comic. And I'm like, damn it, I wish it was there, just because it's such a cool visual. And in the art style of this movie, it would have been cool to see.
Sure.
But so that was a little bit of a bummer. But one of the things I liked was, and I want to get your thoughts on this, the discovery of the meteor, the kryptonite meteor. As soon as Superman, learns about it, he tells Batman, "Oh, I could just go up there and, in a lead suit.
In a suit of lead."
Yeah, and just punch the shit out of this thing. And it's like, no, you can't. No lead suit would be able to counteract that amount of radiation. And so just like the logic, the simple, straightforward logic they put behind um, that explanation, so that they take away that option of, well, Superman can't do it on his own, because otherwise, like, that's the thought what I remember when I was first reading the story, and I'm like, well, why can't he just? I mean, because we've seen Superman in the movies, and he takes a large amount of doses of kryptonite and manages to still save the day and do the impossible. Like, for example, in Superman Returns, when he's lifting the landmass, and it's riddled with kryptonite. So I'm like, by that logic, why can't he just go up there and fly up there and punch this thing to smithereens? But that explanation was like, all right, yeah, that's plausible. Now I understand why he'd need Batman and a bunch of other people to help him to solve this problem. And
Lex won't even entertain the idea of asking anyone for help either.
Oh yeah, and it's a perfect highlighting of Lex's ego, because
he says, "I've done the calculations. I know what's going to work."
Yeah, and he's like, "I'll be damned if I let some aliens save humanity." To the point where he even uses the existence of, and this is vintage Lex Luthor in my opinion, the existence of the meteorite itself. He blames it on Superman. Because by his logic, if you weren't here, this kryptonite asteroid wouldn't be here either. And so he tries to spin public opinion by saying, look, it's his fault. Right? So people ask, well, why is there such importance on Lex Luthor as Superman's, main villain when there are so many others that can physically, harm him? Well, this is an example of why. Because he can do things to Superman that Superman cannot punch his way out of. And that's what makes Lex Luthor so threatening. I find it very interesting and I like that they went here and they just embraced the craziness of it all. Was Batman enlisting a 13-year-old tech whiz, or 14, or however old he was?
Yeah, you're right. He's 13.
A hero, right? AKA Toyman, he likes to be called. Who's created this Batman Superman composite rocket ship.
Yeah, he created it during his fanboy phase.
Yeah. And to basically go up there and take out the asteroid. The whole bit because when Batman makes the initial call, they've come up with a plan. And they tell Power Girl, go, you have somewhere to be, and her job was to basically watch, monitor, babysit Toyman Hero while he got this rocket ready. And the whole banter between Hero and Batman and Superman regarding Power Girl was pretty hilarious. And I know that would probably, like, if this was released nowadays, there'd be a lot of people on the internet complaining about these scenes, right? Because
one of them asks Hero a question and he goes, "Does Power Girl have big?" And then Superman cuts him off.
Yeah. And nowadays that would probably get roasted on Twitter. But I mean, Power Girl's costume back in the day was what it was. And
a 13-year-old boy would generally have one thing on his mind.
Right.
In that situation.
And listen, 99% of the artists at the time, right? Whether people like it or don't like it, drew Power Girl and accentuated a specific, features. And so Hero commented on it, and I'm like, all right, for a 13-year-old boy, that makes a lot of sense. Because there's a reason why I watch Baywatch, and it was him for the swimming.
Definitely not the storylines.
Or the storylines. It was basically Pamela Anderson. That's the only reason I watched. Anyway, my Baywatch aside, notwithstanding. Anyway, the fact that they kept the Hero part and the composite rocket, I like it because it's crazy, it's over the top, it's pure comic book fun, and they kept it, and I like that aspect of it, and I like that it's Batman making the sacrifice play or the presumed sacrifice play, because if presumably, despite the fact that he's in a rocket ship, that amount of kryptonite radiation some of it would seep its way through to Superman if he was the one to pilot the ship.
Right.
So Batman's like, no, I'm taking care of this, and kind of forcibly makes the case, it's a cool moment. It's a small thing, but a cool moment, because Batman knows at the end of the day, even if he were to fall in the effort of saving humanity from this asteroid, the world at large still needs Superman more than they need him. Like, the world as a whole can function without Batman. Gotham would probably be screwed, but the world at large would probably be able to function. Without Superman, then the world of the DC universe is screwed.
Yeah, I mean, Batman knows that Superman would have done it, but Batman takes it upon himself to make that sacrifice instead.
Yeah, and so I really like that moment. And I also like, because then Lex comes with his power suit, the green and purple power suit. Plus, in addition to the fact that we learn that he's also injecting himself with kryptonite, so he's roided out on top of it. When Batman flies off, Superman's like, to Lex, is like, because he's assuming that Batman's not going to make it, you just cost me my best friend. And Superman, knowing that Lex is in that battle suit, can kind of cut loose, because he's like, I can destroy the crap out of that suit. I just have to pull my punches when I've finished destroying the suit. But up until that moment, I'm gonna have fun with this. So like, and not in a fun way, like he's legitimately pissed off. But it was cool to see in that moment that Superman was ready to let loose. Like, that would have drove him. The idea of losing Batman, and again, it echoes their friendship, would send Superman off into that kind of level of anger and frustration and rage. And again, all that corresponding third act battle was right out of the comic. It was perfectly transplanted from page to screen. So I really loved it. And then, Batman in the Batman Superman composite rocket ship, the asteroid is destroyed, and Superman is able to. Batman survives the damage, and Superman is able to fly up there and rescue the hull of the ship that Batman is encased in, and so they save the day. And I really like the bit at the end where Batman and Superman are on the roof, and they're just sort of going over the whole thing. And then, Lois is flying over in the news helicopter. And Superman's like, oh, why don't you stay over for dinner? Lois and I would love to have you. He's like, can't, it's getting late. And Superman looks, and it's like the sun's just about to go down. And he's like, yeah. And he turns around and he's like, yeah, but it's third and Batman's gone already. And so he pulled that Commissioner Gordon kind of disappearing act, which I always love when he he can even get, Superman, who's got superhero. I mean, I'm pretty sure Superman knew he was gone by that point, but still, that was a cool moment.
It was nice to
But
see that connection between Superman and Lois at the end when she gets off the
yeah,
helicopter.
because she really had no role
Nope.
other than that in this. But again, I mean, this was a rather short installment. It was 67 minutes.
Yeah.
It was even shorter than most of the ones that would follow it, and the future ones. But yeah, I was really impressed with the amount of story and how well paced it was for an hour and 7 minutes. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a well-paced movie. There's a lot of action. There's a lot going on. You see battles between you see battles with Giganta, King Shark, Bane, Captain Atom. You have the whole subplot of Major Force being the one who actually killed Metallo instead of Superman.
Yeah.
So you're right. They pack a lot into this movie in just over an hour, and they get a lot out of it.
Right. I was just so impressed. And it's, again, the amount that they kept from the actual story in that short amount of time is impressive. As opposed to something like Hush, where they had more time. They had about an extra 23 minutes. And that movie is heavily different than its comic counterpart. So it's amazing how closely they stuck to the storyline and how much they kept intact.
Well, I'm glad they didn't, draw it out and add in unnecessary filler just to get it to a different runtime.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agreed. Is there any specific that we didn't mention or talk about that you wanna call out?
No, I don't think so. I just no, I'm good.
All right. So if that's the case, then we'll go ahead and rate it. So give it a letter grade.
Oh, this is an easy A for me. I really like the interplay between Superman and Batman. You really get a sense of their relationship together and the way they care for each other. I like Lex Luthor being the overall big bad. I always love me a good Lex Luthor story, even when it's a Batman story. I like having Lex involved as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, the animation was great. The voice acting was top notch, like you said. Clancy Brown, Tim Daly did a really great job. Obviously, Kevin Conroy did a really great job. Even the cast, the secondary cast like Metallo and everybody did a really good job, I think. So this is it was a fun rewatch for me. I hadn't seen it in a really long time. I was glad that you wanted to do this for this episode, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it gets a solid A.
Yeah, it's one that throughout all the course of my podcasting and vidcasting, I don't think I'd ever gone back to review it for one of the shows. So I said, well, now's as good a time as any. Yeah, I really loved it. I loved it as much this rewatch as I did the first time I saw it. It made me remember my love for the original story from the comic. It's got my two favorite characters in all of fiction, and it portrays them almost pitch perfectly. It's an A for me. The animation was fantastic. Those three, all the voice actors were good, but those three leads are just quintessential Batman, Superman, and Lex Luthor voices for me. And so it's an A as well for me. I had always imagined the original story when I read it, that in my mind, that would be a version of that would be the ideal Batman Superman movie if they ever did a live action. I still maintain that. And if they ever try Batman and Superman again, can they just do this? So that's still my hope. Because I hope the idea of a Batman and Superman together is not dead in the water after just one go. If enough years pass, maybe we can have another go at it. And I'd recommend the Public Enemy storyline. But yeah, this in of itself is an A for me.
Cool.
Speaking of Batman and Superman stories, we have a brand new comic, and it's Batman and Superman World's Finest #1, written by the iconic Mark Waid, whose credits include Kingdom Come and Superman. Birthright is another one that he's written. He's done some iconic Flash work, so he's very prolific in the comic book world. And with art from Dan Mora, who has done stints on Detective Comics and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, to name a couple. So, Chris, give us a brief breakdown of what's going on in this story.
Okay. While Superman, Batman, and Robin are battling Poison Ivy and Metallo in Metropolis, Metallo stabs Superman in the heart with a red kryptonite cocktail. This makes Superman basically freak out. His body is transmuting while he is also hallucinating at the same time. Batman and Robin are trying to keep Superman under control when out of nowhere the Doom Patrol shows up. And so they end up taking Superman back to their headquarters to see if Niles Calder would be able to help.
Right, yeah. So right off the bat, no pun intended, I like that this. It's specifically stated that the storyline takes place in the not too distant past, and it needs to, because in the current timeline, Superman is off, or Clark Kent is off on. Now I have to make the distinction because John Kent is also Superman. So Clark Kent Superman in the current updated continuity is off on Warworld, battling Mongol and all that crazy stuff. Batman, meanwhile, just finished a stint of not being in Gotham. So to have this title happening, it either had to take place at some point in the past or some point in the future. So here we are in the not too distant past.
And it's a different Robin than we currently have too, right?
Right. Robin, as far as I understand it, in this iteration, is still Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. This feels very, in terms of the tone, is very Silver Age. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with that. And even Robin's Robin's costume with the little shorts and Batman.
Oh, he's full on Batman 66.
Blue and gray.
Yeah. I gotta say, I loved the aspect of Robin being along for the ride in this adventure, because it reminded me of the old World's Finest comic books, which started the concept of teaming Batman and Superman together. And in those early World's Finest stories, Robin was always along for the ride with Batman. So that's a nice callback by Mark Waid to those earlier days of the title. And it starts off with like full on Michael Bay-esque chaos action.
Yeah.
Like Poison Ivy's causing chaos in Metropolis with the plants. All supposedly to lure Superman out. Of course,
And she's surprised to see Batman and Robin when
Yeah.
when they show up.
and she's like, "Oh, Batman," and Robin's like, "And Robin, I'm right here." That's like,
Yeah.
I like that line. That was funny. And then, but the plan works. They do lure Superman out, and Metallo is laying in wait to stab him with a cocktail of different forms of kryptonite, as far as I understand it.
Well, it's different shards of red kryptonite. So Metallo says that each shard of kryptonite can have a different effect. So he has mixed them together in this cocktail.
Okay, and you do see different effects
Yeah.
happening to Superman. Like, he's getting very violent. He's hallucinating. He's losing control of his powers. And at one point, he's literally
Turns to steel.
right. And it's weird because maybe I haven't read enough actual stories with red kryptonite in it, but my knowledge of red kryptonite comes from the live action interpretations. And all I'm aware that does to him is releases his inhibitions and makes him into a jackass. you know, like if you go from Smallville to Lois and Clark, it really, you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Like the idea that different shards can have different effects. I thought was a fascinating little alteration to what I know, what I'm familiar with red kryptonite doing to him. I really liked the hallucination to where he's seeing, as Batman and the Doom Patrol are trying to help him out and calm him down. He's seeing a combination of Zod, Ursa, and Non, and Lex Luthor in the power suit.
Yep.
And then there's this cool little, and it's not just a thing of convenience. It's interspersed in all this chaos is a flashback to when, early on when in Batman's career, when he had to save Robin and stop the Penguin. Superman helped him out. And at the end,
I really like this flashback because it shows what must be early on in their career. They haven't been working together for a very long time because Batman says, "I realize we don't know one another all that well." But Batman thanks Superman for having his back, and Superman says, "You would do the same," and Batman says, "Always." And then when we come back to the present time, that is in fact what happens. Batman's got Superman's back. He ends up helping him out.
Right. And first of all, I like the fact that just in that flashback, you really get a sense of Dan Mora, the artist, his talent, because the bat costume is a little different. Like the logo on the chest is the original 1939 iteration of it, and Robin's costume is slightly tweaked, here and there. And even because it was such a flashback, they got a scene where Robin's hanging upside down, and it's like it's going to be dipped into a cauldron by the Penguin.
And that's a good like 66 vibes.
Yeah, I'm like, this is vintage. I was just waiting for the words on the screen. See if Robin makes it out next time. Same bad time, same bad chance. Yeah, I was just waiting for it. But those words of when Superman says, you do the same for me, and Batman replies, always. Batman uses that same quote in the present day past to kind of snap Superman out of it and make him recognize that it's me. I'm just trying to help you, because he says Clark at first, and Superman's like, oh, this is some kind of trick, and he's like, would Luthor know your actual name?
Right.
No, but Bruce Wayne would, and he still didn't. Like, he still wouldn't budge, and so that's when Batman, threw out that reference to that earlier adventure. So I liked it. It was, it was well placed, and it came off as important and vital as opposed to being a plot. Because depending on how you play it, it could come off as a cheap plot convenient, or an easy out. But the way it was, where it was placed, when it was placed, and how it was executed, made it feel like a really important, scene, rather than, oh, well, isn't that convenient? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was very well done. And I like how they used, when the Doom Patrol, because Batman kind of puts out a call to Dr. Calder and the Doom Patrol to come help. And to subdue Superman, they use, it's a really cool plot point where they use, what's his name, Mr.
Negative Man.
Negative, that's it, yeah.
And they use him to. Batman says he can shift up and down the electromagnetic spectrum, and he can emulate the radiation of a red sun. And so that's how they get Superman's body to calm down and stop freaking out.
That was a really cool plot point. I really like that. And it's funny because I'm not a fan of the Doom Patrol. Like, I know everybody loves the show. I don't.
It's a little out there for me.
Yeah, it's not my cup of tea. And I've tried reading the comics. My mistake is that they were Grant Morrison written comics. Maybe that's my mistake. But I didn't like the comics. So
a little Grant slander tonight.
Well, no, look, I like Grant Morrison in certain instances. So
okay.
All-Star Superman, I dig it.
Yeah.
Probably one of his best stories. His Justice League run, love it. His first Batman story arc, where he introduced that little prick Damian, loved it. Everything after that with Batman, hated it. So, his Arkham Asylum, didn't really love that. I know it's highly regarded, not for me. So I'm very his early Action Comics run for the New 52, loved it. Subsequent issues, not that much. So he's very hit or miss for me, Grant Morrison is, and but Doom Patrol. Like, if you think Grant Morrison can get weird in a Batman run or a Superman run or an X-Men run, go read one of his Doom Patrol runs and see how weird he gets. So just the Doom Patrol idea has not typically been for me. I enjoyed them here, though. The role they played in this story, I enjoyed it.
Right on.
So Mark Waid did a good job because he took characters that I don't care for at all, and at least made them enjoyable in this story. So good on him.
Yeah, that's the sign of a good writing job for sure.
Yeah. And I love Mark Waid as I'll read anything he writes, because it's gonna be good.
I mean, he's comic royalty.
Yeah, and yet there's a certain group on the internet that he's now in their bad graces, Chris, all because he didn't like the third act of Man of Steel, and so now to those people, what does he know? Shall I list off his resume again, because he's got some bona
fide credentials,
especially where Superman's concerned.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go throwing around the what does he know aspect of the story. But yeah, no. So I well done, Mark Waid, for making me at least be able to enjoy and tolerate those particular characters. But and Dan Mora on art. My God, this was a beautiful comic book.
Yeah, he did a really good job of visualizing the red kryptonite's effects on Superman.
Yeah.
He really it helped me connect to the story better because I could see what he was going through, and it wasn't just telling me what he was going through.
And I love the aspect of this modern look at like the Silver Age style of these characters. Like, it felt very sleek, very up to date in terms of the quality, but they also look like their Silver Age counterparts to a degree. Like Poison Ivy was old school Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
As we talked about, Robin had it was very 1966. Batman had the 70s kind of blue and gray with the yellow oval, which I'm a sucker for the yellow oval, as y'all can see. So there's that. So I love this. The art, it was top notch all the way through. And Dan Mora is quickly becoming one of my modern favorites in terms of art. So is there anything you want to bring up that we didn't touch on that you want to call attention to?
Not really. I am intrigued with the way they left it hanging, where you see Dr. Niles Calder with the little instruments that he's beginning to choose.
Surgery time, yeah.
And you wonder what's about to happen next. So I'm excited for issue 2 because it left me, that's a good job of a good storytelling. Is it left me immediately wanting to know what happens next.
Yeah, that surgery is not going to go perfectly, I wouldn't think.
Probably not.
There's going to be a hiccup along the way. But I'd venture to say that Superman will make it through surgery because he's the co-lead.
You would think.
So if he died in issue 2, it'd be kind of stupid. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, so if we've got nothing to add, let's go ahead and rate this. So remember, it's a 5 for story and out of 5 for story and out of 5 for art. So
I'm gonna go with 2 5s today, my friend. Giving it a 10. Awesome. The story had me engaged the whole time. Even sometimes stories can lose me when they go back and forth between different time periods. This one took us from the sort of recent past to the more distant past, and then back to the sort of recent past. But it didn't lose me anywhere along the way. Like you said, the artwork even changed a little bit with his depictions of Batman in the more distant past. Where he has his just a regular black bat on his costume instead of the yellow oval, which he has in the more recent past. I like the inclusion of Doom Patrol. Like you said, I'm not really a Doom Patrol fan. I don't dislike them, but they've never really grabbed my attention. I've read a couple of their stories and just never really got into them, but they worked for me on this level, and I'm excited to see where they take us next. Waid and Mara seem to be a good team so far.
Awesome, yeah. I absolutely love this story. Again, anytime DC wants to bring this book back into rotation because they've relaunched it several times. They started with in my recent comic collecting run. I think this is this is probably the third or maybe third incarnation.
I think so.
Maybe fourth. I'm not 100% sure, but either third or fourth. And this had me feeling as excited as I did when I read those first issues of Public Enemies.
Oh, cool.
Like I was back in that headspace of, man, I can't wait for the next issue, and so, like I said, gun to my head, if somebody said you can only collect one title, believe me, folks, I have trouble keeping it down to 6 or 8, because there's if it was up to me, I'd be buying 30 titles. If money and space were no option, there'd be a lot of stuff I'd be buying. But if somebody put a gun to my head and said, you can only get one title, what's it going to be? Based on the promise of this number 1, my answer would be Batman, Superman, World's Finest. So it's a 5 for story and a 5 for art for me.
All right. Yeah, few things in comics are as rewarding as a well-told Batman and Superman team-up story.
Yeah. I mean, when you've got those two characters, the expectations are high when you put them together.
Yeah.
And so the fact that this delivered on all fronts, we're off to a great start, and we will be covering this series as it goes along. And so expect more. Expect more look backs to those animated movies as well, those older ones. We'll look through those as well. Me and Chris will go through them while we wait for the next live action DC movies, because there's been delays, and DC really likes making me wait for that Michael Keaton return.
Whew.
I don't know, Chris. I was all ready for November, and then they said, "Well, now you're gonna have to wait till June 23rd."
Well, and the domino effect. Now I got to think that Batgirl's been delayed as well because we're going to see Michael Keaton introduced in Flash, and then Batgirl has to happen after that.
And that just wrapped as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on, man. But look, at the end of the day, as long as both movies are good, I'll deal with the wait.
Yeah, we've been waiting 30 years to see Keaton as Batman anyway. No problem.
What's a few more months? And in the meantime, I can watch the Batman about 45 more times before now and then. Yeah, we'll be back with more Batman, Superman, World's Finest talk and DC talk in general. But until next time, you can interact with us on social media. So, Chris, where do they track you down?
Well, I'm on Twitter at my name, Chris N. Harrelson, or you can search for Commodore Schmidlap. Adam will post about this in the Facebook group. And so if you'd like to carry on the conversation there, I'll be more than happy to see you.
Awesome. And if you want to talk to me on social media, it's at Adam_Leafsfan on Twitter. The podcast Vidcast Network has its own Twitter page at MMNPDC. As Chris mentioned, we have a Facebook group. It's in the description below. Click the link. I'll add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But until next time, remember that Batman and Superman are forever, from their first team up in the world's finest to the last. So long, everybody.